So hi friends, we'll discuss an important current issue with respect to the recent ruling of Supreme Court on GST Council. See, the judgment given by the Supreme Court on GST Council was debated in the different newspapers and lot of analysts has written, and even some of the state finance minister has reacted in supporting of that judgment. Even the union government is also spoken about in support of that judgment. So what is that judgment? How it is going to impact the working of GST system is very important, because this is the first judgment, this is the first major judgment on the working of GST Council when it was introduced. It was introduced in the year 2017, and with this year we are going to complete the 5 years. So how it is going to affect the performance of GST Council, because some states are already making some complaint of this working of GST Council. So this judgment will certainly help us to understand how it is going to impact the performance of GST Council in future days. See, I am not getting into the details of how GST is function and all, because you are all aware. See, but I'll mention some few points, and after that I'll directly entering into this GST Council. See, does really this judgment is about changing the challenging the GST Council? No. This judgment is not about challenging the performance of GST Council. This judgment is something about a tax paid by some foreign person on some foreign entity, that is IGST. They have paid some IGST. On this IGST, the Supreme Court has given a ruling. And what exactly this case? This is not important for us, because this case is related to, actually this case went to Gujarat High Court first. Gujarat High Court first, and later it came to Supreme Court. Supreme Court has upheld what the Gujarat High Court has given its judgment. So this is something about the levying of IGST on components of ocean freight paid by a foreign seller to the foreign shipping line on reverse charge mechanism. That means someone has sent something to India and he has imported it, and he is asked to pay both IGST and customs. Then he went to the court like, why should I pay both IGST and customs? Then the concerned revenue department has challenged. When Gujarat High Court say like, no, you no need to pay. Then the revenue department challenged it in the Supreme Court like, no, he has to pay two different taxes. This is exactly the case. The case name is very important, just have an idea. You can quote somewhere wherever it is necessary. The case name is something related to the Union of India and ANV versus Mohit Minerals. This is a case. Mohit Minerals. Just have an idea. In this case, they have given a judgment, and when they are delivering the judgment, they comment about the GST Council, and almost 1/3 of the judgment is related to this working of GST Council. But no one has challenged the GST legislations or the GST Amendment Act, 101 Constitution Amendment Act. So no one has challenged that, and no one has challenged even CGST Act or IGST Act or any SGST Acts. No one has challenged. It has came in a very private, private individual case, and they have commented on this. Now I'll come to the observations made by the Supreme Court on this. But prior to that, GST Council, just I'll spend few minutes on how the GST structure is working. See, earlier union and state, they are having the different taxation power to tax on various items. Sometimes only union can tax, sometimes only state can tax, sometimes both union and state concurrently tax. Okay, so this is how the structure was. But now what we have done is, we have the taxing power of union and taxing power of state. We brought both this power together, and we have constitute a GST Council. GST Council. That means this GST structure in which both union and state they come together and they decide a single rate, and whatever the single rate that was decided by the GST Council will be implemented by state and center. So this is what and why you need this tax, that all you will study in GST and importance of GST. But this is the GST structure, and who will be there in this GST Council, in the GST, and ultimately the levying authorities are both union and state, but the rate is not decided by them, the decisions are decided at the GST Council. And who are having in the GST Council? In the GST Council, the 1/3 of voting rights are given to the union government. It will be done on the voting lines, any decision taken on voting. And till now most of the decisions are taken unanimously except some decisions on taxing lotteries. But 2/3 of the votes, remaining 2/3 of the votes are shared equally among all the states. Okay, so states and some union territories who are having the taxation power. So this 2/3 of the vote, 2/3 are distributed and 1/3 is with the union. If at all you want to take any decision, you need 75% of the votes, and most of the decisions till recently they have taken only with full consensus, and whatever the thing that was decided in this council will be implemented by state and center, and state will collect SGST tax and union collect CGST and IGST. So these two will be done by union and these things done by the state based on this GST Council. So this is how structure is working. Now the point is, if all the states are interested to take a decision, if center is not interested, you can't implement the decision. Now if the center is interested, but if most of the states are interested, they can take the decision. If most of the states are interested, that is where some of the states felt like the taxation power is with us according to the constitution. According to the constitution, every state is having the taxing power, but under a sovereign pool mechanism, we shared our sovereignty and we are delegated our power to a council to take. But just because some more states and just because union is taking a decision, even though the decision is impacting me, I don't have a full say in that, and they are imposing their decisions on me, so it is not correct. Some states are thinking. So you alone cannot decide. The center and all other states are saying. Now what happened is, in the present context, the most of the states are ruled by the BJP government, and if suppose any issue related to Kerala, if it is discussed in the GST Council, and except Kerala, if no everyone is against to the interest of against to the Kerala's proposal, then though the issue is related to the Kerala will be the loser. So that is exactly the problem in this. Now the Supreme Court has said, this point. Though the union and state is pooling their sovereignty to decide certain things, but this GST Council cannot override the power that the state legislature and the union legislature that is having. That means whatever GST Council that they are saying, that is only recommendatory in nature, but it cannot bulldoze on state legislature, because who is having a power to tax the power to tax in a state? It is the state legislature. At the union level, it is the union legislature, because the parliament approval is necessary. So that means now the GST Council's recommendations will not supersede the power that the state legislature and union legislature is having. That means the recommendation of the GST Council are only recommend. That means they are only in persuasive in nature. They are not compulsory binding on the either state or center. They are not binding on either state or center. But you may get a question, sir, when we are framing the GST legislation, either in the Constitution Amendment Act or in the GST legislation, does anywhere the act or the constitution mention like the GST Council recommendations are binding? Nowhere they have mentioned. Both in the Constitution Amendment Act and at the same time even the GST legislation, they have only mentioned about recommend. That means GST Council will recommend. And there are some provisions in the present day constitution 246A, that means after 101 constitution amendment 246A, they clearly mentioned like legislature of every state have a power to make a law with respect to the goods and services tax imposed by the union. So they are having an every right, that's what 246A says. And even the 279A, the section 279A, if you read, you will get like in that they say like, okay, GST council will recommend, GST council recommend. So they only mentioned about recommend. And moreover, in the constitution 279A article, in class T, in class 6, they have clearly mentioned like the guided philosophy of this entire GST structure should be harmonized. Okay, so the harmonized national market, that means there must be a harmony between union and state, and you cannot take a decision which is against to the interest of a particular state. So that is what mentioned. So that means the constitution, the GST laws not mentioned like GST council recommendations are binding. Now the Supreme Court is saying the GST council decisions are not binding on state legislature or union legislature. They cannot override the power that the state legislature already have, because the constitution has given that power. Constitution has given that power to state legislature to levy the tax, but just in order to make a unified market, they came together and they decided the structure. Now suppose if that judgment is take it for granted and just assume like state no need to bind upon the decisions taken by the GST council, then how it impact the GST structure? It impacts the GST structure severely. How is? Because earlier union is taxing, state is taxing, and different state is having different taxation. Not all the states are taxing at the same rate. In order to bring a unified market, because unified taxation system, that means one tax, one nation, will attract the investors easily. It will become easy for moving of goods and services, investments from one state to another state. That means interstate movement will become easy. That's the reason why we brought a unified structure. Now one single rate for one product across the country. Suppose if the tax on this mobile is 10%, that is 10% everywhere in the country. But suddenly because of this, if one state start to increase, because GST council decided like no, this is not 10%, this should be 5%. But one state think like no, this 5% is no way is benefit for us, because we are having some resource crunch, so we will increase it to 18%, just assume. And if one state started increasing it to 18% and remaining states are at 5% or 10%, 5 or 10%, then is it really symbolizes or is it really shown the unified market? So it will entirely put the GST structure or GST model into a question mark. So it cannot give that unified market. So that is why this judgment is important. The judgment is questioning the basic philosophy of having unified market, and when you are having a unified market, you must be harmonized, but you cannot dictate on a particular state. If state really feel like I am deprived, this GST council decision cannot binding on that state. The state can impose their own different taxes. That is what exactly the statement, that was exactly the judgment is talking about. The GST council is a constitution, it is a constitutional body, no doubt about it. It's a constitutional body. It is created under the constitution. But every constitutional body, whatever they have given, is it compulsory in nature? Take the case of Finance Commission, it's a constitution body. But whatever the recommendation that you are giving, is it binding on the government? It's not binding on the government. But government is respecting the constitutionality of this Finance Commission, they are following the recommendations. Likewise, it is also a constitutional body. These recommendations are GST are recommendatory in nature, but we wanted to make a unified market. That is the reason why we are following the recommendations of GST council. But suddenly when a judgment came like, no, you no need to follow the recommendations, it is up to you, then it will impact the entire structure. That is what you need to understand. But the point is, because but government when this judgment came, the government reacted like, no, it doesn't put any impact on working of GST council. Whatever we have written under article 279A class 6, like harmonious nature of this national market building should be done, that was reiterated by the Supreme Court. So it's not nothing new, that is what government said. But on the other hand, some states are reacted like, now you see what the Supreme Court has said. Supreme Court said like, I no need to abide with the decision of the GST council. Tomorrow if any issue comes which is against to me, I have an every right to impose my own tax. That is what they are saying. And they are saying like, you asked me to surrender my authority, but Supreme Court is saying, even if I surrender my authority, you cannot undermine the power of legislature that I have in my state. The implications are then how they are going to have the implications are in the entire GST structure. As I said earlier, this is not to challenge the GST Act, this is not to challenge the Constitution amendment. This is only in private case, but they express this opinion. With this opinion, does really the states are going away from the GST council? Are the states not respect the GST council? Till now we haven't expect any such reaction from anybody, because the structure of GST is in the interest of the country, is the interest of all the states. If someone want to move out and if someone want to follow a different tax structure, then it will be very difficult for the investors or the traders in the other state to come to have their own presence in this state, or the traders of this state has if they want to go to other state, it is very difficult because they need to follow a different taxation structure and taxation procedures. So that is why no state has said that. The only thing is, this judgment is going to impact how the GST council is going to function. Earlier we always stipulated to the 75% voting, and if center and most of the states, if they are okay, they can implement the decision. But now you cannot do that. Now you cannot do that. Why you can't do that? Because the states are already having a judgment of the Supreme Court. Now they are confident that if these people, majority people, if they take some decision which is against to the interest of mine, then I have an every right to take my own decision. That's what Supreme Court is saying. That's the reason why now the deliberations that are going to happen will be much more coordinated, will be much more cooperated, that will be based on much more principle of cooperative federalism, that will strengthen the more deliberations, that will bring a good results which will benefit to all. Haven't we followed that decision? Yes, we followed till now only that aspect, except in one, that lottery issue. But there are some issues that are going to pop up again with respect to rationalize the GST structure, with respect to increase the tax rate. There are some issues that are going to come, and on that issue the majority people alone cannot decide the things. You need to take everyone into account. And one more impact is apart from this working of GST council, one more impact is based on this judgment. If someone go to the Supreme Court to question the constitutionality of this entire GST structure, we don't know how the Supreme Court is going to act on that. But as on today, whatever the judgment that is given by the Supreme Court, we should not consider it as a threat to the GST structure, or we should not consider it as against the GST structure, but we should only consider it as the spirit with which the GST council should work. It will strengthen the cooperative federalism. It will increase the relevance of our different stakeholders. So that means, as what we have mentioned, as what it was mentioned in the article 279A class 6, like that whatever that collaboration or cooperation and that harmonized nature is there, in order to strengthen this judgment will help. Until now all the states have taken in that spirit, and we must continue in that spirit only. But there are some dangerous things, like if some state don't want to implement the recommendation of GST council, then it will be little bit serious, and if someone challenge the GST Act and GST Constitution amendment, then it will be danger. But otherwise, it is only to strengthen the cooperative federalism. It will to strengthen the way in which GST Council should work and the spirit with which GST Council should work. So be careful about this, because this judgment is very, very important. This is a very first major judgment on GST Council. So this is about GST Council, and this is about the Supreme Court ruling on the GST Council. Okay, thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.